Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei becomes a dark dragon part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video, and also go support the VanishMagic for writing that awesome fanfic. Let's start this video. Life is a cruel ride filled with pain, joy, and a whole lot of other emotions that don't always translate into words, or don't translate well, I should say. This is the story of one particular individual who has had his life turned upside down, inside out, and then crushed by a multitude of different factions. This is his struggle of recovering what was lost. Is he strong enough to do so? Issei Haidu is an 8-year-old boy in the town of Kuo, Japan, living with his mother and father, happily, however not for much longer. Issei, honey, wake up, your breakfast is getting cold, his mother calls from the kitchen. He is only 8 years old, Helen, let him sleep, he has nothing to do anyways, father laughs from the table as he is drinking his morning tea. That is exactly my point, he is 8 years old, he should at least be able to get out of bed by himself. What high standards you have for him, Thomas mumbles. That's it, throwing the apron on the floor, his mother storms up the stairs to the peacefully sleeping Issei. Boom, Issei wakes up to his bedroom door forcefully thrown open by none other than his already ticked off mother. Issei, out of bed now. Shouting, breakfast has been on the table for 30 minutes now, you are going to have to throw it in the microwave, unless you want to eat cold food with that. She promptly slammed the door shut and stomped down the stairs. It's not even 9 o'clock yet, and I have already gotten on my mother's bad side, Issei thought as he grudgingly drug himself out of bed to start his morning routine. I'm only 8, what does she expect of me? Issei pondered as he headed downstairs to meet his frustrated mother and quite amused father. Morning Odasan, there is our little sleepyhead, have some nice dreams, Issei? His father asked while putting down his newspaper. Not really, I don't really remember what I was dreaming about, Issei lied as he thought, I can't tell them, I was thinking about Irina all night, ooh, I can't wait to see her today. Issei, Earth Takedo? His mother called, snapping him back to reality as she put his breakfast on the table before him. Oh sorry, I was just thinking about random stuff. Well, try not to think so hard, your food gets cold a second time, or else it won't be any good. Sheesh, my Odasan really doesn't like it when people ignore her food. So Issei, do you have any plans for today? His father asked, hoping he could spend some time with his son. Well, I was going to play with Irina at the park later. Why? I was thinking that maybe you and I could spend some time together and go fishing, his dad said. You could bring Irina too if she wants to come. Thanks, Dad, but I don't think Irina would want to go, and we have been really looking forward to this for a while, so maybe next weekend, he replied softly in order to not hurt his father's feelings. The truth is, Issei had been looking forward to spending time with Irina for quite a while now. When they did hang out, it was for very short periods of time, and Irina had also mentioned that there was something she had wanted to tell him. Issei had only just finished his breakfast when the doorbell rang. I wonder who that could be at this hour, Issei's mother thought as she opened up the door and found Issei's neighborhood friend, Irina, standing at the front door. Is Issei able to play today? Irina asked cutely. Before his mother could answer, she was almost knocked over by Issei as he ran towards the door. Hey, Irina, I was just finishing breakfast, Issei turns to his mom. Okay, well, I'm going to play with Irina in the park for a few hours, bye. Just as he finished saying that, he grabbed Irina's hand and ran out the front gate. Watch for cars while crossing the road, and be careful, Issei. His mother shouts while leaning out the door. When Issei's mother finally shut the door and walked back into the kitchen, she saw Thomas had still not left the table. You know, if you keep babying him like that, he will never grow up, smirked Thomas. If you actually did something other than sit and read the newspaper in the morning, Issei might be more motivated to get up in the morning, Helen quickly responded with a small amount of venom in her words. We all have our quirks, Helen. Meanwhile, with Issei and Irina. Careful, Irina, you might fall, Issei warned as he saw where she was attempting to climb to. Relax, I have done this before, you worry too much, besides if I do fall you will be there to catch me, right? Just be careful, I wouldn't want to see you get hurt. That's so sweet, Irina screamed as she lost her footing and was hanging from her hands. Issei, I'm scared, please help, Irina cried with tears developing in her eyes. I don't know what to do. If I try to climb up the structure I might fall and not be able to save her, but if I try to catch her, she might get herself hurt landing on me. Issei thought for a moment and decided to try and catch her. It's okay, Irina, I'm right here, just let go, Issei said calmly. I don't think I can do it, Issei, it's too long a fall. Then Irina looked down and saw Issei there below her, ready to catch her when she let go. Then she fell. You were supposed to catch me, Issei, however, you do make a pretty comfy cushion. Irina giggled as she landed on Issei, who stumbled as he held his arm out. Place get of me, Irina, Issei mumbled as she was forcing the air out of his lungs. I think I'm going to stay right here, she teased as she felt him trying to move her off. You're heavy, he wheezed as he continued to struggle underneath her. You know it's mean to tell a girl she is fat, right, Issei? she continued to tease him. "Oh, I am in so much trouble," Issei was thinking until he was interrupted by a hug. "Thank you though for saving me, it was really sweet," Irina said as her cheeks turned a light pinkish color. "That's what friends are for, right? Hey, we should probably start heading back, it's getting dark out," Issei noted. Issei and Irina were walking back from the park. Irina stopped and looked up to see a shooting star. "Hey, Issei, quick, make a wish," she said as she pointed up to the passing scene. He turned to see it before it disappeared and thought, "I hope nothing ever changes, this is how life should be." "So, what did you wish for?" Irina asked, looking at her friend with curiosity. "For the world to keep spinning," he joked. "Come on, we are almost home, I would hate to have your parents worry about you." They continued their walk with small conversations about nothing important. However, Irina was still wondering about what was it that Issei really wished for. Issei bringing Irina to her house. "Well, thank you for the day, Issei, I had fun," Irina says as she opens the door to let herself in. "And wait to do it again sometime," Issei replies before leaving the porch and heading back to his house. As he walked in the front door, he remembered there was something that Irina wanted to tell him. Ah well, it couldn't have been that important if she forgot about it too, he thought as he opened up the door to his own house. When he shut the door and turned around, he was faced with one very angry parent. "Where have you been? You do realize that it is after dark and dinner was on the table 30 minutes ago." His mother yelled as she saw her son come into the house. Issei noticed she looked a little flustered with her apron hanging to one side and her normally kept black hair loose around her shoulders. "Geez, I made her worry about me again," Issei thought as he took off his shoes and made his way to the kitchen. A muffled sorry was heard from him as he walked past his mother. Food was always a touchy subject at the Haidu household, especially when it came time to eat it. Heaven help you if declined to eat a part of the dish that was served at that time. If you declined to eat dinner entirely, you were royally screwed, so Issei, knowing that he already had at least 2 strikes against him, treaded carefully as he sat down at the table. The first thing he noticed and knew immediately that he was doomed was the kale. Kale is a nasty form of lettuce, it tastes terrible. "I'm just going to shove it down, not going to think about it," Issei thought as he looked over to his father and saw him struggling to eat it as well. "Well, at least I'm not alone in this fight." After successfully getting through dinner without an episode, Issei started to get up from the table but was stopped by his mother. "Issei, you finished already? Would you like some more?" his mother asked politely. "I'm so close," he thought as he turned and faced his mother. "No, I'm full, but thank you for dinner," he replied politely, trying to stay on her good side. "Oh well, alright, make sure you wash up before you tuck in for the night, hun." "Good night, Otasan," Issei said as he hurriedly climbed up the stairs. Once Issei was showered and in his pajamas, he got into bed and started to reminisce about the day. "Today wasn't bad, got to hang with Irina and spend some time away from my parents, plus I got to help Irina when she was in trouble, kind of like a damsel in distress." Issei smirked as he relived that moment through his memories. Well, there are worse ways it could have ended, those were his last thoughts as he drifted off into a soundless sleep. Bang! Issei shot up from his bed at the loud noise. He looked over towards his dresser, searching for his alarm clock. Seeing that it was past midnight, his thoughts wandered as to what could be going on downstairs. While making his way to the door, he was stopped in his tracks by the sound of glass breaking and a scream. He sped down the stairs only to yelp in pain as he ran across the broken glass on the floor. "Damn, that hurts," complained Issei as he looked at the fresh blood coming out of his feet. The pain was soon washed away as he looked up to see his mother on the floor. Not moving. "Mom?" Issei questioned with tears forming in his eyes. "Mom," he yelled louder, hoping for some sign of life. As he reached for her hair, he noticed that her usually brown hair had a reddish tint. Blood. What happened? Why is she hurt? So many things were running through his little mind until a voice broke through his thoughts. "Oh, thank heaven you are alright, I thought they had taken you," and his dad stopped mid-sentence as he saw what laid before him covered in blood. No, those damn angels, they will pay for what they have done," Thomas vowed, still staring at his wife on the floor. Issei was still in shock, even more so now that his father burst in crying and dressed in what looked like priest robes, holding something that looked an awful lot like a lightsaber. "What is going on?" Issei cried, looking at his father for answers. "I promised your mother that I would put my old life behind me, but it seems fate had different ideas in mind." His dad then stood up but then felt a sharp pain at his side. Looking down, his robe had a half-circle hole, the size of a softball, missing. The flesh beneath it gone as well. He collapsed as blood left his body in irreplaceable amounts. "Run, cough, Issei." Again Issei stood dumbfounded at what had just transpired. His mother lay before him in a pool of her own blood that was now mixing with his father's own fresh supply. He surveyed the scene in front of him with no emotion, no conscious thought, but one, why? He was too busy staring to notice the hooded figure that was coming from the other room. "Ah, well, now our little exorcist problem is taken care of," said the man who had previously stayed quiet, thinking his job was done. Issei, hearing the new voice, recoiled to the corner, knowing that this man was responsible for his parents' deaths. What do we have here? I missed one. Oh well, better make it quick. As the man raised his right hand, a blue light started to form just beyond his fingertips. Why, mumbled Issei as the light got brighter, why did you do this to my family? He nearly shouting, his anger overcoming his rational self. So the mouse decides to speak. Well, I'm sure this is all really confusing, so let me help you out. I am fallen angel Donasik, and originally I came here to recruit your exorcist father. However, your mother got in the way and well, you can see how that turned out. The man, now named Donasik, sighed. Say your prayers, kid. Finishing the sentence, the blue ball of light reshaped itself into a spear. Then faster than his eye could see, Issei was stabbed. What cough, how ... His last words before the blood coming out his mouth prevented speech. Thump. Issei's body hits the floor, landing in his mother's now drying pool of blood. This could have gone better. Know that if it wasn't for your father, none of this would have happened. The last Issei saw of him was a pile of black feathers floating where the fallen angel once stood. I am dying, my parents are dead, I have nothing anymore. At his last moments, this was all he could think of was the tragedy in front of him. Perhaps it's for the best. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate, waiting for his last breath to end the suffering. Until he heard another new voice, he opened his eyes to see a woman kneeling over him. Hey there little guy, what is it you desire? She asked with her piercing green eyes staring intently at his crippled form. What is it that I want most in this moment? My parents. He thought first, but then shook it away as a greater sorrow was revealed. Pain, so much pain, then death. That is what I want, an end to the suffering. He thought. Issei spit on the ground before him, removing some of the blood piling up in his mouth. He mumbled. End my suffering. Those green grew bigger at the 8-year-old's words. Fine, but it will come at a cost, she said before she grabbed his neck and snapped it like a twig, then dropping his body to the floor, as if she discarded trash. I hate dealing with kids, however, his will was most certainly broken. The green eyes lit up for a moment while the woman thought out her plan. Yes, he could be of use to us. The woman turned around to face the boy again, only now she had 2 pairs of bat wings that stretched out from her back, revealing her true self. She placed the 8 pawn pieces on his chest and started to chant. In the name of the old Satan faction, I Chloe Leviathan call to Issei Haidu. Hear my command. Return thy soul from the shadows of death to the human realm, rise once more as my demon servant, rejoice for you have been given a new life. An orange magic circle, with the crest of the old Satan faction, formed under Issei as the pieces fused with his body, signaling the return of his soul. Suddenly Issei was awake, well conscious really, and the last thing he heard before he slipped into sleep was this. Now you live for me. The whistle of a whip echoed off the cellar's stone walls. Issei had been revived 8 years ago and born into new life as a devil in the servitude of Chloe Leviathan. Servant is being generous for the amount of torture Issei went through during the first few years and the many years that followed. Whack. The sound of leather against flesh, never have my ears heard such a wondrous noise. Chloe laughed as she stared down at the bloody, bruised back of a 16-year-old Issei. Hello, did you hear me? Earth to swine. She yelled as she recoiled the whip once more, itching to swing it again. That's enough, Chloe, any more and our healers won't have anything left to heal, said the man who was previously mute in the corner, occasionally taking a sip of wine. If you damage him beyond repair, then we will have no clue as to how the evil pieces react without a king. Fine, but he is still my servant, Shalba. Chloe sighed as she lowered her whip. You there, heal him up so he is ready for his next session. Pointing to a girl no older than 12, with black hair and a face that had been marked by the numerous beatings she went through. Issei was still breathing when the young girl had gone to check his pulse and start the healing process. She figured him losing consciousness was the only way to block out the pain. Issei could still hear though. He listened knowing never to speak for fear of getting punished in excessive amounts, though some would already consider the torture he goes through excessive. Well, at least it's over for today, Issei thought as he slowly regained his consciousness. He had barely spoken since the day of his death, and the few words he did were the screams of him pleading for the torture to end. Issei, after taking in his surroundings, once again noticed the little girl with the iron anklet shackled around her foot, preventing her from escaping. She looked over to him for a minute, waiting for an acknowledgement he was conscious. Issei nodded his head in her direction, as this had become the custom for him, giving his thanks. He could do not much else with his arms shackled to the wall and his feet tied behind him, making him look like a bloodied, kneeling version of Christ on the cross. I heard they found another servant, Shalba said they were bringing him in soon. The girl was hoping to get Issei to talk. She had tried many times over the last couple of years to no avail. He may have looked dead on the outside, but in his mind, he was a twisted mess of confusion, anger and sorrow. However, anger was the most prominent of the three, anger towards those who imprisoned him here to this crappy existence. Why couldn't I have just died? Issei thought, but then remembered what transpired that night. Right, I did die, she killed me, only to steal my soul and torture me for her pleasure. The girl could see the hate in his eyes clear as day in the dimly lit room. She hoped that anger wasn't the only thing that existed in him anymore. "I will get you out of here, I swear it," she vowed. She had made the same promise after healing him after his daily beatings. In the beginning, it gave him hope, but after hearing it so many times in fact, the vow meant nothing anymore. To Issei, it became part of the routine: get woken up by a slap punch to the face, depending on who was to torture him that day. Get force-fed the leftovers from the day before, then a torture session for what seemed like hours on end, or until he couldn't feel it anymore. Whichever came first. Then the girl healed him and said her vow. Well, isn't that curious? Here I was going to come down to grab the fake devil for bath time, and I find a much more interesting scene instead. Chloe squealed with joy as if she had gotten a new play to toy with. Chloe continued down the stairs, laughing under her breath. The girl was now shivering in fear as she knew that whatever was to come next would involve pain and an excruciating amount of it. Chloe stopped right in front of the girl and kneeled down so she could stare into the eyes of an obviously scared little girl. "It's cute really, that you want to save him," she began, still glaring intently as if trying to read her thoughts. "You should be more worried about yourself once I tell Shalba that you're planning on escaping." The girl's eyes got as big as walnuts and her shivering stopped almost completely, only to be replaced by the look of pure dread on her scared face. The last time she acted out she was only fed enough food to remain alive, in a constant state of hunger. She remembered the words Shalba spoke to her as he gave her the first full plate of food she had seen in a great while. Flashback: "It's a shame to have to do this to you, you were always so obedient, why must you curse us so?" He smirked with his usual arrogance. He leaned down and pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering in her ear so only she could hear. "Next time food won't be the only thing you will be missing," he whispered as he backed up and kicked the platter of food across the stone floor. And the girl still shivered from the memory. She tried to forget about those words and just obey the commands of her captors. She was so lost in her thoughts of fear that she failed to notice the magic circle that lit up the room. "Ah, why must we always meet on unpleasant terms, Chloe?" Shalba spoke as he emerged from the magic circle. "Sorry to disturb you, Shalba, but your plaything has made an interesting declaration," Chloe spoke in an irritated tone. "Oh, and what did our young maiden do now?" Shalba questioned as he poured a glass of wine, waiting for his subordinate to elaborate. "She vowed to help Issei escape." There was a moment of silence before Shalba decided to speak. "Oh, did she now?" Turning serious, "You wish to leave?" he questioned, looking down at her. The girl knew there was no right answer, so she answered to the truth of the matter with a mumbled yes. "Very well." As he snapped his fingers, the shackles dissolved into particles. "You're free to do as you please." Shalba smirked and turned back to Issei, who, hearing all of this, knew that whatever was coming next wasn't something he wanted to watch, so he let his head hang low. The girl's first thought was she could leave, yet something in the back of her mind told her to run while she could. There was a part of her that wanted to help Issei. She ran over to him and started to remove the rope. Issei looked up to see the girl struggling with the rope around his ankles. The movement to the right of his eyes dragged his gaze to see Shalba get up and slowly make his way behind the young girl. The girl looked up to see Issei staring back at her with sorrow-filled eyes. His entire face screamed, "I'm sorry." When Shalba was directly behind her and the girl could feel his presence, he flared his aura enough to create a ball of demonic energy that he then fired through the girl's chest. Her mouth opened before she died to let out a scream that never came, eternally trapped with an expression of pain sewn across her face. And thus a maggot dies. Shalba sighs as he lowers his hand and turns to walk away when something unexpected catches his eye. A magic circle forms at the top of the stairwell and a very burnt guard crawls out. "My lord, we have been found," cough his last words before he choked on his own blood, dying. "Well, isn't this quite the surprise?" Issei's Shalba sighed as two figures emerged from a second magic circle. "Shalba, you are hereby under arrest for threatening the peace of the underworld," the red-haired man proclaimed while looking over the sight before him. "By the Formas. Shalba, what have you done?" Issei shouted, looking at the deceased young girl before the very broken Issei. Issei was very much awake now, seeing what transpired before him seemed to jumpstart his humanity somewhat, not that there was much left after the years of abuse he endured and finally caved into. The most noticeable thing was the dead girl in front of him. He didn't care for her like she did for him, he couldn't care anymore. That section of his being was ripped out over endless hours of torture. Issei looked up again, seeing what looked like a magical light show being performed before his bloodshot eyes. "You will not best me, you false Mau, how dare you take the name of Lucifer?" Shalba yelled as he flared his aura, attempting to force the Mau to back down. "You have violated our customs, Shalba Beelzebub, for that alone, you will face judgment," Issei said as he raised his left hand and prepared to fire a ball of demonic energy. Boom. As the smoke cleared, Shalba could be seen with his hands raised, forming a protective demonic circle. "Ah, judgment you say," she snickered as he prepared to fire an attack of his own. "I shall give judgment to those who abandon the old customs," Shalba shouted, launching his own massive energy. Issei opened his hand and from it, a deep red aura, crimson almost, flowed out and swirled until it formed a circular wall of magic. When Shalba's attack hit the wall, it evaporated into nothingness. So this is the power of destruction, which gave him the label as an ultimate class devil, Shalba thought as he backed up a few steps. Before I take my leave, tell me, how did you know where to find us? Shalba asked as he mentally started to prepare a teleportation circle. For a while now Ajuka has been trying to track those evil pieces you stole a few years back, and only moments ago, a number of those pieces flared in power, alerting him to their location. So my manipulation of their accursed system is my undoing, Shalba thought as he prepared to teleport. Well, it has been a pleasure, Isseixharem, but I'm afraid I must take my leave, he laughed, slipping back into his usual arrogance. With a snap of his fingers the ground started to shake. Shalba, what have you done? Isseixharem asked as he struggled to maintain his balance. He raised his right hand and shot a ball of destruction in Shalba's direction, only to have it fly right through the spot he was previously standing. The ball continued, hitting the wall and adding to the amount of rubble that now filled the room. Isseixharem, we must leave immediately, the woman with pewter gray hair, wearing a maid outfit, sternly said as she motioned to the rubble falling from the ceiling. Grafia, we need to take them with us, Isseixharem pointed to the unconscious form of Chloe and the seemingly dead body of Issei laying on the floor. As the woman now named Grafia dragged Chloe into the teleportation circle she prepared, Isseixharem went over to check on the unconscious Issei. I could have sworn he was chained to the wall before, Isseixharem thought as he kneeled down to pick him up. One of the blasts must have broken the shackles, he pondered as he walked into the magic circle, and the four of them disappeared in a flash of red light. Grafia had teleported them to Isseixharem's office in the devil's capital city of Lilith. Grafia, would you please take her to one of the empty rooms and place a confinement seal on it? Thank you, Isseixharem said as he placed Issei down on a chair in his office. Ajuka is going to need to see this. Isseixharem took a step back to look at Issei, looking at his bruised body and countless scars. Just what all did they put you through, he thought, but he already knew the answer. Hell. Isseixharem was sitting in his office, hands clasped together raised to his forehead. His elbows resting on the desk in front of him, he was deep in thought. Well, until a knock on the door interrupted his pondering. Sensing his friend's presence, he sat upright and asked the man to come in. Ajuka, so what did you find? Isseixharem questioned as he began rubbing his temples, trying to remove the built-up stress over the situation. I took a look at the boy as you asked, and honestly, I have very little in the form of words that would ease your mind, the man named Ajuka said as he folded his green, shin-length cloak, allowing him to sit down in the chair across from Isseixharem. Serafal has some of the best people helping him, but some of that damage, Ajuka paused, as he pointed at his head, simply may never be repaired, he finished, leaning back into the chair. Nodding in understanding, Isseixharem approached the topic that was troubling him greatly. What of the evil pieces, how are they reacting without a king? He asked as the evil piece system was the cornerstone of the Mao's new rule. For the moment it seems to act as any evil piece would, reincarnating the host into a devil. However, I will have to wait until he wakes up, but it is possible he has a sacred gear, Ajuka said, still thinking about everything he had learned from the boy. Since he is a devil, reincarnated with the evil piece system, the system will basically treat him as a free piece. Isseixharem sighed as he came to the same conclusion. Yes, I thought about that as well, however, let's wait until he has recovered some before we push him into the world. He said as he finished until another thought crossed his mind. A devil reincarnated unlike any have before, without a house or allegiance. This could cause trouble. They both sat in a rough silence thinking over what was said until Isseixharem broke it saying, this is troublesome that the old Satan faction has decided to try something as bold as this, Isseixharem said as he looked over towards his friend, Shalba, attempting to revive humans, in order for his faction's numbers to rise. This could pose a threat to us. Ajuka scowled as he disliked the thought of his creation being used with such destructive goals. It bothers me that the evil piece system has capabilities were outside of my knowledge, he said as he looked back into Isseixharem's gazing eyes. The fact that Shalba used those evil pieces he stole to reincarnate someone against their will, it goes against the system. Sensing the anger rolling off his friend, he attempted to calm the situation. I understand you're angry about your pieces being stolen and upset at the current situation, he said, then turned solemn for a second saying, I am too. I don't think you do. Ajuka stood from his chair shouting, paused and then turned toward the window that overlooked the market square. Every single piece that was in that set was a mutation piece, Ajuka said as Isseixharem's eyes widened at the new information. I crafted them all myself. Isseixharem was silent for a moment, thinking about what this could mean for the underworld. If this kid was revived using 8 mutation pawn pieces, just how powerful is he? Isseixharem wondered. The power of 8 pawn pieces is in the hands of a kid roughly in his teens who has been brutally tortured for a good chunk of his life, Isseixharem said in a cautionary tone. We must be wary of who he allies himself with. I agree, however, I may have an idea about that. Meanwhile, in the Citri domain, Serafal Leviathan was watching Issei's chest rise and fall from the observation window in the hospital hall. He is going to be okay, doctor, right? Serafal asked with sadness-filled syllables. The man beside her pushed up his glasses and turned to face her. "There are a few ways I could answer that." He tensed up as he saw the tears building in her eyes. "In all honesty, I don't know if he will be fine." He returned his sight to his patient lying on the bed behind the glass. "He has an accumulation of bruises, years worth, most of which never healed properly. He has numerous improperly healed broken bones, and that's just the physical damage. Who knows what kind of state his mind is in. Then to top it all off, he has 8 mysterious evil pieces inside of him doing who knows what." The doctor wasn't told they were mutation pieces, it was on a need-to-know basis. The doctor looked down, not wanting to face the truth of the matter, and mumbled just loud enough for Serafal to hear. "I have no idea if we can save him. I'm not sure if there is enough left inside to be saved. I'm sorry." The doctor's last words before he left Serafal to think over his words while staring at the kid, who brought tears to her eyes. "Curse those devils, why could they do something this mean to a sweet boy like this?" she thought as the fury she was holding back was starting to overcome her previously calm appearance. "Ah Shalba, if I ever get my hands on you, I'm going to smack you all the way to heaven," she shouted, startling the passing nurses and others in the hospital. Once her frustration cleared some, she noticed those staring and quickly apologized for the outburst. However, she didn't notice that in her outburst, she slammed her magical girl staff into the floor, cracking it. "Oops," she said cutely, removing the staff from where it was embedded in the floor. She looked up to check if people had stopped staring. They hadn't. She did notice that they weren't staring directly at her, turning her head so she could look in the same direction. She noticed immediately what their eyes were fixed on. She looked at the now thrashing form of Issei, moving as if he had a seizure. He was soundlessly screaming in pain. Doctors and nurses flooded into the room past Serafal and blocking her view. She wanted to stay, to make sure he was okay, but she knew that she should report to Surziches of the situation change. "They will pay for this," she mumbled as she teleported in a blue flash, leaving little ice crystals on the window from where her hand once pressed the glass moments ago. The doctors come to the conclusion that he is trapped in his own mind and were at a loss of what to do. Inside Issei's head, he was reliving a particularly humiliating session with his captors. Issei was leaned up against the cold cellar wall, trying to catch some shut-eye before his captors decided to let out their frustrations on him. He stopped trying to doze when he heard the latch on the cellar door flip up, allowing the old wooden door to swing open, revealing the outline of a very feminine figure. As the woman skipped down the stairs, she started to hum. Issei recognized the voice immediately as the sound bounced off the stone walls. She walked over to Issei and stopped in front of him, kneeling down for Issei to see the sadistic smile of Chloe cover his view. "I see you're awake," she said smiling, then proceeded to undo his restraints. He had still not answered her as the last seal was removed, allowing his body to fall towards the floor, becoming a crumpled mess. "Come on, get up," she said, obviously annoyed that she was going to have to drag him. "I have something special planned for tonight, but first you need to get cleaned up." As she lifted him up the stairs, dragging him behind her, Issei's eyes widened some, hearing that he was getting washed. Normally a bath consisted of water gushing out of a high-pressure hose used for cleaning the grape barrels. It was a short walk up the cellar stairs and then a few more steps across a mildly cold tile floor till he was thrown out a door onto a patch of artificial grass. Even with the sack over his head, he knew they had already passed the door that led to the hose. Issei was guided by Chloe up a set of stairs, followed by a short walk till Issei could feel she stopped. He heard the click of a door handle turning shortly after he was pulled towards the sound and heard the door shut behind him. The first thing Issei realized, even before the sack was taken off, was the almost forgotten sense of warmth against the soles of his feet. Carpet. Chloe lifted the sack from Issei's head and stepped behind him, letting him take in his surroundings. He was in a bedroom, her bedroom. He started to shiver as what little warmth the carpet gave him left his body only to be replaced with an increasing amount of fear. While Issei shivered in place, too afraid to move, Chloe's sadistic smile grew wider as she saw how much control she had over him. In reality, the doctors were looking over Issei with mixed levels of confusion. He had gone from resting peacefully to what could only be described as a violent coma. The doctors were positive that his condition had everything to do with what was happening inside his mind, but they had no way of helping him with it. Now the boy was shivering as if he was cold, but those who had seen it before could tell that the boy was shivering in fear. Surziches and Ajuka were talking calmly about matters relating to the underworld when a magical circle appeared in the room, coming from it a very teary-eyed Mao. "Serafal, what's the matter?" Surziches, noticing the saddened face and watery eyes of his fellow Mao. She didn't reply and ran over to Ajuka, looked sternly at him for a sec and swung her staff at his head, shouting, "Ajuka, you better fix him this instant, he has been through enough as it is." He was unprepared for the attack and was smacked hard enough to leave a mark. "What happened, Serafal? Why would you hit me?" Ajuka said, puzzled as to what could have made such a drastic change in her personality. "Something is wrong with the boy," she said, then turning to Surzich's making a scowling face. "You told me to report if anything changed in his condition. Well, it has." The three teleported to the hospital almost instantly, but not before Surzich's had a chance to look at Ajuka, who returned his worried gaze. Back in Issei's nightmare, he had been dragged into the bathroom, with Chloe instructing him to remove his torn shirt and pants. When he was naked, she told him to take a shower, pointing to where the soap was and instructing him on how to change the water temperature. He just stared at her, trying to figure out the meaning behind all this. "Don't expect me to wash you," she said, then thought about it a second and said, "Unless you want me to." She smiled, her face full of mischievous intent. There was no more room to fit people in Issei's hospital room, between three masks, a handful of doctors and some nurses who were attempting to change bandages on the still shivering boy. "What happened?" Surzicha said as he turned to the 5 doctors who were discussing the situation. "Our best guess is that he is in a coma of sorts," one of them spoke out. "It's possible that his memories are playing like flashbacks and he is reliving those memories." Another said while they nodded in agreement. "Well, is there anything we can do?" Surzicha asked, worried of what was to come of the boy. "I may have a solution to that," Ajuka said as he finished analyzing the evil pieces. "It may be possible to wake him by using the evil pieces as a defibrillator of sort." Everyone looked at him confused as to what he was suggesting, till one of the doctors realized what he was doing and asked, "You're going to try to jumpstart his brain?" "Kind of, not going to jumpstart it, more like run interference, to try and disrupt his current state," Ajuka said as he prepared to a magic circle over the heart of Issei. He prepared to send a decent amount of power into the evil pieces, but stopped when he saw Issei start to struggle. It was hard to tell if it was from what he was experiencing or from the power that was entering his body. Regardless, nurses and doctors tried to hold him down while Ajuka did his magic. Chloe had finished drying Issei and herself off from their bathe, where she teased him to no end. She smiled at the thought of what was to come next. Chloe started to walk out the bathroom until she noticed Issei wasn't following her. She went back and grabbed his hand and tugged, indicating for him to follow her. She led him to the bed, where she pushed him on the bed covers. Issei could only guess as to what was coming when she led him to the bed and then tossed him on top of it. "You ready?" Chloe asked as she dropped the towel that was previously covering her naked form. She had a rather nice Hercules figure, a large bust, and a nicely rounded rear, but Issei was too focused on the ravenous smile that took up the majority of her falsely innocent face. "This is going to be fun," the thought as she licked her lips. Without warning, she pounced. Ajuka was concentrating as he sent pulse after pulse into the screaming teen. He was getting worried as to how much power his body could absorb before it shut down. Serafal was openly crying now, seeing how much more abuse his body had to be put through, even if it was for his own good. It made Surzich's uncomfortable, but he knew this was possibly the only way to help the boy. "I'm not sure we should keep doing this, Ajuka. He has been through enough," Surzicha said as he removed himself from the sidelines. "We will just have to find another way." Ajuka sighed and quit sending power into Issei, got up and was about to leave when Serafal gasped, gathering the group's attention. "Groan. He's awake," Surzicha said, shocked that the boy had awoken after so much pain. Issei was looking back at them with fear in his eyes, as he wasn't sure of what kind of situation he was in, till he saw the man Shalba called Surzicha at the foot of the bed. "Where am I?" Issei thought as he started to look around the room, noticing the many people that occupied it. He was trying to remember what all happened, but was frustrated that he couldn't remember how he ended up here. He was interrupted when a man with a stethoscope came over and kneeled down on the right side of his bed. "How are you feeling?" Issei looked over at him and was immediately frightened. He hadn't heard those words in a long time. When he had, it usually meant something terrible had happened. Issei's empty eyes stared back for a moment longer until his body recoiled on its own, now an automatic response. Those in the room stiffened as they saw how he reacted. Surzich's, while not approaching him, he asked, "What is your name?" It had just dawned on them they had no idea who this boy was. Thanks for watching this video. Part 1 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support the VanishMagic for writing that awesome fanfic. See you in the next video. Goodbye.